Hi, I'm Jess. Welcome to my channel. I feel so dorky saying that. Okay, so this is my YouTube channel. I just started it, and I am going to teach you how to make sourdough. So I started my sourdough journey about a year ago. I really wanted to learn sourdough, but I was always super intimidated by it. Even though I like to bake, I like to cook, I do a lot of it. Sourdough, for some reason, just seemed really, really hard and scary. So I decided one day I was determined to learn it. I went down the rabbit hole. I learned all the things about it. And then I decided I'm going to make my own starter. If I can successfully make a starter, surely I can make bread. So that's what I did. I made my starter. This is Cinderella. Yes, I'm a nerd, and I named my starter. This is my original starter. I started it a year ago. I used to have a whole bunch of starter and a whole bunch of discard and all the things, and I thought, this is too much. So now this is my starter that lives in the fridge, and I only pull from her when I'm ready to bake. Sometimes I bake straight out of the jar. So this is also my discard jar. Everything is together. I don't need 15 different jars of Cinderella everywhere. So she's all in this jar. I pull it out when I'm ready to bake and I feed it. So this is Cinderella Jr. And I fed her last night. Yes, it's a she. And this one lives in the fridge. In fact, the jar is still freezing cold. Occasionally I will feed the original starter. Just throw some flour and water in there. I don't even measure it. I just eyeball it, pour it in there, stir it up, throw it back in the fridge, and it's fine. So I pulled out 100 grams of her last night and fed her about 150 grams of water and flour and let it just sit overnight and grow. So it's already pretty much past peak. It's flattening out now. So I like to wait until it has peaked and starts to drop back down before I use it to bake with. It's just my personal preference. Everybody has an opinion on it. This is what I like to do. So I'm going to show you how we make a basic sourdough loaf today. And these are some of the tools that I use. It is not required to have all of these tools, especially if you're starting out. You can mix sourdough with your hands, which I also do. So one of the things I do recommend that you absolutely have is a digital scale. This is a very cheap $10 scale off Amazon. It is not anything special. The only thing that was a requirement is that it weighed in grams. So that's how we're going to do all of our measurements. I do not go by cups or tablespoons because volume is not accurate. I use weight measurements. So we're going to start with this. You will also need a bowl. That will be another requirement because you can't just mix it on your counter. And then all of these other tools I use just because I like them. So we got a scraper. We have a silicone spatula and a dough whisk. Again, everything I buy or use comes off Amazon. So if you wonder where I get all my stuff, including my Dutch oven, it all came off Amazon. So there you go. There's my secret. Okay. So what we're going to start with is we are going to zero out our scale with the bowl on top of it so that it does not account the weight of the bowl. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take some room temperature water. I don't use filtered water. It is not special water from a spring in the mountains. It comes out of my tap. Now my tap does have an RO filter on it because we have really nasty water here that's very full of minerals. So I do have an RO filter on it, but other than that, that's the only water it is. I do warm it up a little bit because it is like 20 degrees in Texas today. So the water is kind of cold coming out of the tap. So I fill it up with, just fill this up. I put it in the microwave for about 30 seconds, warm it up to where it's a little more than room temperature. And that's what I use. Nothing else is special about it. All right, so we're going to start with 350 grams of water. I always go over every time. All right, so we're going to fish some of this out. 349, 350. Okay. All right, next we're going to take the sourdough starter. We're going to kind of move it out of here, and we're going to zero out the scale. Next, we're going to do 100 grams of the sourdough starter. So my sourdough starter is actually floating today, but it doesn't always. So you can't always go by the float test to know if it's ready. All right, we're going to zero it out again. And we're going to take our dough whisk, or you can use just a regular spatula, it doesn't matter. And we are going to mix it up just until it's pretty milky. If there are chunks floating in it, that is fine. All right, zero out the scale. Next, we are going to do our flour. So I am a little particular about the flour I use. I use King Arthur's bread flour. You can use just regular, like an unbleached all-purpose. That is totally fine too. You can use rye flour. I personally have einkorn flour in my pantry, but I do not bake with it. But I do feed my starter with it. My starter is 100% einkorn. It has a very high protein content, so that's why I use it. It's better for the starter, like as far as strength. But I don't bake with it. I don't know why, other than it's just different. It's a different type of flour. It's a different consistency, and you would have to measure it differently. So I didn't feel like messing with all that. Really, you can't tell the difference. So I'm just using regular bread flour. Zero out the scale. You're going to use 500 grams of bread flour. Or 550, whatever. I would love to meet somebody who could actually pour this and be right on the money. Seems impossible. All right, so now I just kind of like wallow it out just a little bit. And before I mix this in, I'm going to add 10 grams of salt. I sometimes use kosher. Sometimes I use sea salt. Today I'm just using regular iodized salt. Then I like to add olive oil and honey to my regular sourdough loaves. I feel like the texture is a little more softer and fluffier when I use those, and just a tad bit sweeter because of the honey. It's not going to be anything substantial. You're probably not even going to notice it. But if you want to stop there as far as ingredients and mix from here, that's totally fine. So with olive oil, I add 15 grams. And honey, the same, 15 grams. Perfect. All right, now we're going to take the dough whisk again. We're going to take it off the scale. And we're going to just mix this up. Once I get it pretty mixed, I will take a wet hand and I will start mixing it with my hand just to kind of really help incorporate all of the flour and the water and all the ingredients together. I just flip it around and I mix it up just to make sure everything's nice and mixed. Just going to scrape the sides here and get the rest of the dough that is on the sides of the bowl. That way we can mix it all in. Okay, so now we're going to have something that looks like this. This is called a shaggy dough. It's just a newly mixed ball of your sourdough, and it will just sit here now. We're going to cover it and we're going to wait 1 hour, let it kind of just chill. And then when we come back, we're going to start doing our stretch and folds. Okay, it's been an hour. Now we're going to start our first set of stretch and folds. We're going to do this 4 times every 30 minutes. So we're going to undo this. First thing we're going to do, and this will help in our next phase, which is bulk fermentation. What we're going to do first is we are going to temp our dough as is before we start the stretch and folds. So right now, this is just a regular thermometer. It's not anything special. It's just a meat probe. It's digital, so it's a little easier to read. Just going to kind of stick it in the center of the dough. And I am right now getting a reading of 74.8 degrees. Okay, so we're just going to remember that number for later. Wet hands. You're going to take and pull it away from the bowl just a little bit, and we're going to grab one end and we're just going to raise it up, and then we're going to fold it on top of itself. We're going to turn the bowl 1/4 turn. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to grab this, we're going to pull it upward, and we're going to lay it on top. Don't pull so hard that you're stretching or that you're tearing your dough. You do not want to tear the dough. Turn it 1/4 turn. I'm going to peel it away from the bowl. Grab this section, pull it up, and fold it over itself. This is building our gluten network in our dough. This is going to strengthen the dough. It's going to take it from this shaggy dough that we're at now to a nice smooth dough that is starting to get tighter, and it is going to be easier to handle, because right now shaggy dough is messy and it is very hard to shape. It won't hold shape right now, but once we start building the gluten in our bread, then when we get done with the bulk fermentation, which is basically that means that we're going to set it on the counter, we're going to let it proof, and it's going to start to build gas and it's going to rise. That's our bulk fermentation process. So once we get past that, you'll have a nice tight gluten network from this, and then we'll be able to shape the dough and be able to score it and bake it, and it'll all not be like this. All right, so we've done round 1. We're going to cover it again, and we'll be back for round 2 in 30 minutes. Round 2, same thing. Sometimes I do more than 4. Okay, round 3. "30 more minutes. Okay, this is round 4. This will be our final stretch and fold. After this, we will start our bulk fermentation. I always kind of feel the dough, and that's why earlier when I said sometimes I do more than 4, if it still stretches, then I still fold it. Because it will get kind of tight and be harder. See how that's getting harder to pull? Okay, that's good. Okay, so now I'm going to get a different bowl. So this is a Cambro. I like to do my bulk fermenting in this kind of bowl because it's straight sides and it's see-through, so you can kind of gauge your rise. So we're going to put this in here. And then I just kind of gently press it down so that it kind of fills the bowl best it can. We're going to take our thermometer again, and we're going to, once again, we're going to temp our dough. Stick it right in the center. Okay, so now the dough is 69.6 degrees, which is kind of my average. I usually get about a 70-degree dough, ranges between a half a degree or so. That's pretty typical for me in my house. So there's a chart from the Sourdough Journey, I believe, that gives you a percentage of rise dependent on your temperature of your dough. So at 70-degree dough, which is what we're going to call it, 69.6 is close enough. So we're going to say it's 70 degrees. So by 70 degrees, according to that chart, it is a 75% rise is where we want to hit in order to stop bulk fermentation and begin our shaping process. So how we gauge that, that's why these Cambros are really important, or really handy. I guess they're not really important, but anyway, you can see kind of the level, and it's not gonna be perfect because like I've got a big air pocket right here, but it's pretty accurate as far as gauging by your eyeballs what percentage rise you're gonna have. So here's where we are. Right about right there is our dough line. So we want to do 75%. So again, I just kind of eyeball it. So if that's the dough line, then we go here, that's going to be 100%. We do not want that, that's double. We want 75. So 75 is really going to be closer to this lip, probably just a hair under it. So I'm going to move this band to about where I feel 75% is, which is going to be about right here. So that's where I want my dough to rise and reach before I start my shaping process. Is it going to be 100% exact? No. I've overproofed and underproofed dough. It happens. But this is the best gauge. By temping your dough and knowing how much percentage rise you're looking for, that's going to give you the best chance for a properly bulk fermented dough. So that's where we are now. Okay, so this is our seedling mat. It is, again, just an Amazon thing. It was cheaper than buying an actual bread proofing mat when basically they're the same thing. So look for seedling mat on Amazon. You'll find this. The one I got has a thermostat on it, so I can adjust the temp. So it's reading 68 degrees right now as the actual temperature, and it is heating, but I have it set on 72. So it'll kick off automatically at 72. So I use this. This is the little thermostat, and I just shove it in the dough so that it will read what the dough temp is, and then it will shut off when needed. I refed my starter for another loaf, and it is going crazy. Okay, we'll see you back at the end of bulk fermentation.